2 lakh crore rupees every single year. That is what India is quietly spending on fertilizer. And honestly, most people have no idea this is even happening. Let that number land for a second. 2 lakh crore rupees. That is the second largest subsidy the Indian government pays out, sitting just behind food. And in FY25 alone, the bill already crossed 1.87 lakh crore rupees before the year was even done, blowing past what was originally budgeted. So what is actually going on here? Here is how it works. You are a farmer. You walk into a shop and buy a bag of urea, the most common nitrogen fertilizer, for just 270 rupees. Sounds reasonable, right? Except the actual market price of that same bag based on global rates is closer to 7,000 rupees. That gap, that massive, jaw-dropping gap, is plugged by taxpayers. The government steps in between the manufacturer and the farmer and quietly pays the difference. Every bag, every season, every year. Now, this exists for a real reason. About 85% of India's farmers are small and marginal, meaning they are farming less than 2 hectares of land, living season to season, with basically zero cushion. If fertilizer prices spiked overnight, food prices would follow and rural distress would spiral fast. The subsidy is essentially a pressure valve for the whole economy. But here is where it gets genuinely alarming. And this is the part that does not get talked about enough. India does not make most of this stuff at home. Look at the import dependence numbers, and they will make you uncomfortable. 78% of the natural gas needed just to produce urea is imported. For phosphate fertilizers, that number jumps to 90%. For potash, nearly 100%. So every time global energy prices spike, every time there is a Russia-Ukraine situation or Middle East tension, India's subsidy bill automatically balloons, and there is almost no domestic lever to pull. This is not just an agriculture story. It is a fiscal story, a trade vulnerability story, and increasingly, a food security story, all wrapped into one very expensive package. So now that you know the scale of what we are dealing with, the obvious question is this system actually working the way it should? Because spoiler alert, it is not. Let us get into that next. So we know the subsidy exists and it's massive. But here's the more uncomfortable question. Who's actually benefiting from it? Because spoiler, it's not who you'd think. Let's start with the winners. Large and medium farmers buy more fertilizer. More land, more bags, more subsidy captured. Simple math, uncomfortable outcome. The fertilizer industry wins too. Guaranteed buyers, government-backed payments, zero pressure to innovate. Cozy deal, honestly. Now the losers. Marginal farmers and sharecroppers. People farming land they don't legally own. Often have no formal land records. And without land records, government schemes basically don't exist for you. So the people this policy was theoretically built for, they're capturing the least benefit per capita. And then there's the national treasury, quietly bleeding out as this ballooning cost crowds out spending on irrigation, rural infrastructure, and agricultural research. But here's the part that doesn't make headlines enough. The soil is losing too. Healthy crops need nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in a ratio of roughly 4:1. India's actual ratio right now? A deeply skewed 10.9 to 4.1 to 1. Why? Because urea costs 270 rupees a bag, while phosphatic and potassic fertilizers run 3 to 4 times higher. So farmers drown their fields in nitrogen, and over time you get degraded soil, falling yields, and contaminated groundwater. A slow environmental debt quietly handed to the next generation. This subsidy isn't just a fiscal problem. It's actively making Indian agriculture less productive, one over-fertilized field at a time. So what does a fix actually look like? That's exactly what we're getting into next. So now that we know how the system is built, let's talk about what it's actually doing to the leg underneath. Here's the most honest way to describe India's fertilizer subsidy. It's like giving someone daily painkillers for a broken leg instead of actually setting the bone. The pain. High input costs for farmers gets numbed. But the underlying injury? Soil degradation, fiscal strain, dangerous import dependence. That quietly gets worse every single season. And look at this trend line. Subsidy spending has only moved in one direction: up. The subsidy is treating the symptom, not the disease. And the disease has three heads: low fertilizer efficiency, badly imbalanced nutrient use, and near total dependence on imported inputs. None of that gets fixed by keeping urea cheap. In fact, cheap urea actively makes the imbalance worse, because farmers have no price signal telling them to ease up on nitrogen and add more phosphorus or potassium. It's like a GPS giving you wrong directions because someone's jamming the signal. Farmers are making perfectly rational decisions based on the prices they see. But those prices are artificially distorted, so the rational choice ends up being an irrational outcome at the national level. So what's the likely path forward? Policymakers are increasingly circling around direct benefit transfers, where subsidy money goes straight into farmers' bank accounts instead of being baked into fertilizer prices. That way, market prices can reflect real costs, nudging balanced nutrient use, while farmer incomes are still protected. Sounds clean on paper, but implementation is politically sensitive and logistically messy, especially for the 85% of farmers who are small or marginal. If you're in agri-input supply, rural retail, or food processing, here's what to actually watch if subsidy rationalization kicks in. Even gradually, input cost structures shift. Demand for phosphatic and potassic fertilizers could climb. And any global supply shock to urea or natural gas will hit India's fiscal math hard and fast. The bottom line? This policy is at a genuine tipping point. The next few budget cycles will tell us whether India decides to set the bone, or just keeps handing out painkillers. And that decision will ripple well beyond farm gates. Follow us for more updates like this. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and X.